the CD you gave me 15 years ago, maybe. What's it called?
Reanimation.
Reanimation. I still have the espresso cups.
That's awesome. Yes, that is my only vice that I have left, and I blame Tony Levin.
Espresso is good. I have one double espresso in the morning. That's it.
Before it became illegal, I did try the civet cat coffee. Do you know what that is?
No.
So in Indonesia, they have these feral cats that live outside, and I don't know who came up with the idea, but they grow the coffee beans. The cats eat the beans, they digest it, and then they turn it into espresso.
Oh my God.
I have, as you'd expect, it's very bitter but strong. But I have an Indonesian friend, and when she went over there, she got me some. But since then, they've decided it's unfair to the animals, so you can't get it anymore. But that's definitely the weirdest espresso I've had.
That is wild.
Are you ready?
No.
All right, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I'm your host, Malcolm Moore, and today I have one of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. Chris Parker. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Malcolm, for having me. This is very exciting.
Where are you today?
I am upstate in a town called Athens, New York, which is near Hudson, New York. It's about 2 hours north of New York City on the west side of the Hudson. It's a house I bought up here.
Oh, nice. You know, I grew up in Rochester, New York, so I know the area very well. What's the weather like today?
It's humid, but not as bad as the last couple of days. Today is only like 76, 77, and there's a breeze. It's very July-like.
That's interesting because I'm out in the desert in Palmdale, California, and it is 76 here. Very nice and dry.
There you go. Serendipity.
Well, let's tell everybody how we know each other. You know, the more I thought about this, I couldn't remember exactly when we met. I'm guessing it is through Carol and Steve Gadd, maybe when I started doing your website. Do you remember when we first met?
Yeah, it was doing the websites and Chris Parker Sketchbooku and the Chris Parker Artwork websites.
Yeah.
And you were recommended by Steve, I think.
Yeah.
Steve and Carol. I'm pretty sure that's where I got your number. And we never actually met in person for a long time. We were corresponding by email, and I would send you my sketchbooks, and you would scan them and then send them back and put them up on the site. And you came up with this whole system, which is fabulous, you know, of being able to go through each sketchbook page by page, and then,
But I do remember we did hang out once in New York City. I think I was doing some work in Woodstock at that point, probably Jerry Murata, because I used to run his website, and I think I came into the city because I remember we went to some diner together.
Well, that sounds familiar. Yes, I remember that. Yep.
I have Chris Parker here today, not only because he is a wonderful person, but he is a drummer and a painter. If you know his drumming and you're a drummer like me, he's played with a lot of people like the Brecker Brothers, Bob Dylan, Cher, Natalie Cole, Donald Fagen, Ashford and Simpson, Aretha Franklin, Freddie Hubbard, James Brown, Salt-N-Pepa, Stuff, Miles Davis, Patti LaBelle, Michael Bolton, Lionel Hampton, and Quincy Jones. Those are only some of them. So you're starting to get the idea. And I want to start out by asking you, my wife, Christine, loves Salt-N-Pepa. What did you do with those guys?
The big hit called Push It.
Yes. She sings that all the time.
That's a great record.
Yeah.
It was really fun to do. They were wonderful to work with. I also did Tramp.
Yeah.
And the Shoop song. Shoop.
Oh, man, you're on that too?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Tramp is like a remake of the Otis Redding, Carla Thomas version, basically the same beat, but Push It was really adventurous. You know, we spent a long time in the Green Street recording.
Yeah.
And they didn't really know. They had a producer, Herbie Lovebug Azor. I think that's his last name, pretty sure. He didn't know, you know, what they wanted or what they had, and So we spent a long time experimenting, and I finally came up with that beat. Do, 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 do. And what was funny is they're saying, not on Push It, but on Tramp, he wanted to record each element of the drum set one piece at a time, just the hi-hat, just the bass drum.
So wait,
just
was this 80s or 90s?
Early 80s, I think. It might have even been 79, because the studio was popular then because Curtis Blow had done his first there.
These are the early days of rap.
Yeah.
And especially to have female rappers back then. That I remember that was pretty rare too, right?
Exactly. That's what they were standout. They were noticeable because of that. There hadn't been a female, not that I know of anyway, hadn't been female rappers before that, and a trio combination of Salt-N-Pepa and Spinderella was their DJ.
For my younger students, what you just mentioned, I know this was common back then, but maybe people now don't know as much. I remember Every Breath You Take by the Police. Stuart Copeland did the drums, one drum at a time. So you did that too. So that was kind of a thing back then, right?
It was kind of a thing because it gave the producer more control over the elements, and left it more wide open for remixes. Remixes was a big thing.
Right, the 12-inch.
And sorry?
I remember I worked at a record store then, and the big thing were 12-inch records, and they would have the song like you're talking about, but then maybe 3 different remixes of it.
Exactly. And I have, over the years, heard so many, probably 20, 24 different remixes of Push It, where they start out with just the drums and the cowbell part, or they start out with just the sequencer part, or they start out with just the lyrics, and then extend it. The original thing is maybe 5 minutes long, I guess, but I've heard the 10-minute version that goes on.
Well, it's because people played these in clubs, so people could dance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And once you get people dancing, as you know, that's important. Keep them on the floor. That way they go back to the bar and they're very thirsty. They buy more drinks.
Everybody's happy.
Yes. Exactly.
Now tell me, back then in the 80s, doing something like this project, when you went in there, did they map out the song with like an Akai MPC or anything like that?
No, he didn't have an Akai. I think that machine wasn't even around yet. They had a Emu Sp12.
Oh yeah, I remember the early sampler.
Yep, which was like a 8-bit, might have even been 4-bit. It was very low quality.
Yeah. And
we had another, it wasn't a Kai, some primitive Commodore 64.
Oh man.
Sequencer, very primitive stuff that he had used in his bedroom at Queens College or something. So he brought the whole works and they hooked it up in the studio.
But pretty radical DIY, right?
Yeah, very radical. And I don't know how they got the deal with, I think it was on Epic, CBS or Epic. They got a deal to do this record.
And who recommended you?
Well, I worked at Green Street a lot doing different projects. The guy who owned it, Steve Loeb, he was my brother-in-law at that time, or my soon-to-be brother-in-law, let's say. My then wife was his wife's sister. So,
okay.
We were close, and Steve Loeb and his partner, Billy Arnell, had a company called Anacrusis Music, which was a jingle house, and I used to work for them a lot.
Oh, cool.
And then he got this studio on Green Street. He took it over from somebody and turned it into, he really wanted to do records and stuff. So we did a lot of demos there. I remember working with Patti Schiaffa.
Oh, wow.
Bruce Springsteen's wife. She did a big demo there. I worked with a lot of singer-songwriters there. So I was familiar with the studio and with the engineer, Roddy, Hui, I think was his last name, Roddy Hui.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steve Loeb, the studio owner, was the guy who called me and said, you might not want to do this, but I got it's some kids from Queens, and they've got a rap. They don't really know what they want to do, but they like to, they need an actual drummer to realize what they're trying to do. They've got a thing. I said, oh, it sounds like fun. So I went down.
Nice. And boy,
And
that was a good choice by you. It did fairly well.
It was indeed. The guy at the record company was named Eddie O'Loughlin. I wonder whatever happened to him. Who was a typical Irish looking guy. A lot of curly red hair, and he looked completely incongruous with Herbie Lovebug Azor and Salt-N-Pepa and Spinderelli. He stood out more than I stood out. So he really, he had everything but a shillelagh and a shamrock and a clay pipe. He was like a leprechaun. He looked really out of place in the studio. Funny, but he let them do what their concept was, what they wanted to do, and that's what we ended up with. That beat and that cowbell part, and it was funny. It gets a lot of mileage, man. I've they've recut it to, I think it's Progressive, some insurance company, where they have a guy pushing the mower. That was a popular commercial on TV, and in Canada it runs a lot. For some commercial, I get a check every year, which is great.
That's awesome. All right, I want to get into your solo work, and mainly because I'm so excited about your new album, Heart of Mine.
Oh,
and I think the first thing I need to ask you is, I love your work with the Chris Parker Trio, but now you are a quartet. So tell me how you got to that point.
Well, Kyoko, the pianist, often plays at this place in Brooklyn, Ornithology, and she uses Michael O'Brien and sometimes a saxophonist named Troy Roberts, great tenor player, and this guitar player, Yuto Kanazawa. So the saxophone and guitar are kind of interchangeable with her quartet, and she has different drummers. John is one guy. There's another guy she plays. Oh, Matt Wilson does the gig sometimes. Yeah. Matt Wilson, great, big fan of his. But I went to hear her, and I heard the interaction between Yuto Kanazawa and Kyoto. Like when he was soloing, she's comping behind him, very supportive. And when she was soloing, he's comping behind her. And they just seemed so locked in. And I said, I want some of that. I like I like what's happening there.
Yeah.
And he's a Berkeley graduate. He studied with Mick Goodrick, the late Mick Goodrick at Berkeley. And he's, I'm pretty tough on guitar players and I'm pretty discriminating.
Right.
I mean, I'm spoiled by Cornell Dupree and Eric Gale. And
you played with the best.
Jeff Mironoff and my band, Joe Cool, I loved. And there's Hugh McCracken. There's a bunch of guitar players I really love. But in terms of playing time and playing solos, I'm really discriminating. And this kid, I have to call him kid, he's probably 20-something, 28.
Right.
Really did both well. He plays a nice solo and he plays great rhythm. And in the studio, he really knocked me out because I said to him, what I'm hearing is like Wes Montgomery meets Larry Coryell, and they have a discussion about Grant Green. He said, "Oh, sure, okay,
no problem."
And he just seemed aware of everything, very astute about guitar styles and different players. I said, this one is really, not the Metheny sound, but the Metheny approach. He said, okay. And he just sort of tuned in to what I was hearing, which was really great. And the interaction between him and Kyoko was really great. So that's how it ended up being a quartet.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean because I've been listening to this CD ever since you sent it to me, like every day. I love having it in the background. And one song that popped out to me, I think it's called This Here. The guitar solo is crazy. It sounds like it's backwards. I almost thought it was like a EWI wind instrument. Do you know how how did he get that sound? It's really wild.
Know. He's got a pedal board and it looks normal to me, with phasing and echo but I don't know what he does. But plugs them backwards, plugs the input into the output. I don't know.
But you know what I mean, right? It just kind of jumps out. It almost sounds halfway between like a legato violin and like the kind of like the early Steve Hackett stuff when he would put his pinky on the volume, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that sound. I don't know how he gets it. Yeah, I know it was like a hollow body guitar, electrified hollow body. It's not a Stratocaster or Telecaster, which I'm more used to. Yeah, he does something, and it sounds like it's backwards. Yeah. He played the solo, and then I don't know.
So
but
cool.
That's one of his things, and
it's magic.
Yeah. And his rhythm playing is really good. He really locks into me, and the bass player, either Michael O'Brien or Amin Salim, really hears what we're doing and adds the rhythm part to that, which is great. I love a good rhythm guitarist like Nile Rodgers or Cornell.
Yeah, especially being the leader of a band who's a drummer. You want really tight and good rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. The guys in your clip are great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Just talking about the band I play with, Everything Hurts. Yeah, everybody's really good at that. Thank you.
Everything Hurts. I love the name, too.
Well, I can explain now why it's called Everything Hurts, because our lead singer, John Manfrolotti, who's also the guitar player, he was on Everybody Loves Raymond with Ray Romano, and they still hike together. And apparently they were on Runyon Canyon one day, and they were getting to the peak of the mountain, and John just squatted down on the ground, and Ray was like, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Everything hurts." And once he told us that story, I was like, that's the name of the band.
That's the name of the band. That's great. Great.
All right, so back to your album. Here's a strange thing that happens to me all the time. Has this ever happened to you? Like, I'll be taking a shower in my head or out loud. I'll be singing a song. Before I know it, it goes from one song to another, and it almost becomes a mashup. And then I hear both songs at the same time. I bring this up because I love Thelonious Monk, and especially the version of Nutty Freedom that you do on your new album. And it said in the liner notes that you combine that with an Eddie Harris song. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, Freedom Jazz Dance was Eddie Harris's big hit. Well, along with Compared to What and Cold Duck Time. He had a bunch of them, but Freedom Jazz Dance was the first time I noticed Eddie Harris.
Yeah.
And I love that tune with the crazy line. And I always loved Let's Cool One. I mean, Nutty Freedom.
Yeah.
Let's Cool One was on the CD before this. Coolipso, we called it. But Nutty Freedom and Freedom Jazz Dance always occurred in my head, like you say, in the shower. Sing the melody to Nutty Freedom, and then I hear the answer, Freedom Jazz Dance. And it happens with a lot of tunes. I'll be singing something and it segues right into another tune, and I don't know if it's the key or the mood or the magic of music. Music is in the air, it's atmosphere, and things kind of wash over you like a breeze. You hit, oh my God, there's the key of B flat washing over me.
Yeah.
What do I know? It's in B flat. And certain songs, resonate in that key.
And it sounds really natural on your album. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it worked out well. I'm happy with that one too.
I love the beginning of the album. You start with the song Bijou, and it's really cool because it almost sounds like you're getting alien communications with a little riff there. I love starting the album because it's like you're picking up these frequencies and then it launches into the beautiful song.
Yeah.
It says in the liner notes that you've always loved that song. Tell me a little more.
Well, I was backing up strippers when I was starting when I was 11 years old.
Wait, you've got to tell us how you got that gig. You can't just throw that out there.
Okay. I was getting a haircut. My dad was with me. We were getting haircuts. And the barber was talking to my father, basically, as he's cutting my hair, and he's talking about his gig. The barber was a tenor player as well. Ronnie Sant, his name was. And he's griping to my father, I can't find a decent drummer. We got this gig at at this place, and we really need somebody who can do it and knows these different styles and stuff. And my father piped up, well, my son plays drums. And he said, yeah, but does he know this? Does he know jazz? Does he know, does he, he mentioned a couple of tunes, and my father was my big supporter, oh yeah, he could do that. He could do that.
Yeah.
And dollar signs are spinning in my father's head. And he said, well, and I think the barber was kind of half joking, half serious. He said, well, when can he start? He said, he's available tonight. So with a fresh haircut and a set of drums, my father drove me to the gig, which was at Nino's Cocktail Lounge in Brookfield, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And they had exotic dancers. They had strippers, and Ronnie Sant, the tenor player, had a trio with B3 and a bass player. Bass player is still around, Russ Muma. He owns a music store in Danbury, Connecticut called the Music Guild. Wow. I think he's still around. But so we played that night, and everybody was happy. Nino was the owner. He was definitely mafioso type, Nino was no doubt about it. He looked like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. Every time I see Goodfellas, I think, there's Nino. And that kind of temper too, don't try to amuse him,
right.
You find me amusing.
Yeah.
That scene in Goodfellas. Anyway, so it went really well that night, and the dancers.
Was that your first main gig?
I had done other little jazz gigs,
yeah.
kind of with my elementary school music teacher and with people who came to the house. We did little parties and stuff like that. But that was an actual club gig. That was my first real club gig, and I made $100, which in 1961.
That's pretty good.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And I brought the money home and put it on the kitchen table for my mom. I had 4 younger brothers, so that really helped buy hot dogs and tuna fish, and red beans to make chili. So
cool.
But the next time I went, one of the dancers, I can't remember their names, said, "Can you give me a rumba?" And I said, "What?" She said, "A rumba, a rumba." And I had no idea what a rumba was.
Right.
But I remember going through these 78s that my father had, and he had a Woody Herman collection, and one of the tunes was Bijou, and underneath it says rumba.
There you go.
So I said, "Oh, let me check this out." And it's that beat,
Yeah.
Said, "Oh, I can cop that." So I practiced it for a while, and the next night when I had the gig, she looked at me and said, "Can you give me that rumba?" And I said, "Here it is."
Coming
right up. And she loved it, and she came up afterwards and pinched my cheeks. So
that was the approval.
Just right. So
that song is really important to you, and it's sat with you for a long time.
Really important. Yeah, as my gateway into pleasing and accommodating whoever I was accompanying. That's the deal. You play drums, you accompany the singer, or you're the horn player, and you're an accompanist.
Yeah.
You give them the foundation that they need rhythmically, and you give them textures and dynamics, and make them dance. If you can get the dancer so that she's comfortable dancing, or the audience is comfortable dancing, you're doing your job, which is really important. Still, 100% important. 100% of the gig is entertaining people. Making the music accessible in terms of all that stuff, the dynamics, the tempo being steady,
right?
The textures, mean something to the soloists or the singer. So all that stuff, that was at 11 years old, was a real learning experience.
That was important.
Yeah, not only musically, but anatomically.
One of my favorite songs on the album you wrote, it's the 11th song, the last song, "You're a Giver." I know a little bit of your career, that from reading, you started playing trumpet. So I'm curious, because you're a drummer mainly these days, how do you compose your songs? Do you sit down at the piano? Do you come up with a melody in your head? What's your method?
Yeah, that one started with lyrics, actually. And then I was sitting at the piano, making the lyrics work as a melody. And then I sort of filled in the chords and did different things. It was like a stream of thought, though, a stream of consciousness. So it's not a perfectly iambic pentameter poem, but and I won't sing it. I'm never going to sing it.
Yeah.
But the lyrics were like the basis for the rhythms and for what happens with the melody. And then sat at the piano. There's a couple of tunes that I wrote on bass. Came up with a bass line first. I still have a Fender Precision. I play bass sometimes.
Can't go wrong with that. Wow.
Yeah. Or I use come up with a bass line left hand of the piano, a bass line that I think is cool, and then write something that goes with that.
So with this song, tell me how it happened. Did you sat down and worked it out lyric wise and a little bit on the piano, but how do you bring it to the band? Do you write it down notation wise or just play the riffs for everybody?
No, I wrote it down, and my handwriting is terrible, and the opposite is this A flat or A natural? Is this, almost a note at a time. And it was correct, but it was just, I'm not I can't use Sibelius. I'm not or finale. I'm not good on that. I used to have finale 25 years ago, and I got pretty good on it, but it had its limitations then. Sibelius is much better. But I know a guy I can hand him my handwritten chart and he can put it in Sibelius like in a half an hour. So,
oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, he's great. And I can also, make a voice memo of the melody that I'm hearing.
Right.
And I can send him my handwritten chart and then send him a voice memo of me singing the melody.
Right.
And he writes it out and says, "Is this what you mean?" And 9 times out of 10, he's got it. He's really great. Sometimes the time signature is the toughest part about it. Do you want this in 4 or is it in 6/4 or what? How are you hearing? So that one, it's got I think the intro is written in 2/2, like a half note.
Right.
Equals. So it's a little odd that way, but that turned out to be the easiest way to write out the melody, and the 3 sections work together. So that's how that. Yeah.
What kind of drumming do I think of when I think of your playing? Obviously, you know how to play everything, because if you look at your discography on your website, it's exhaustive. You've done a little bit of everything. I mean, in my mind, I always think you're a great funk, jazz, and pop drummer. That's what I think of the most. I do hear a lot of New Orleans second line. Where does that come from? How did that enter into your psyche of drumming?
The earliest memories I have of listening, having access to my father's 78s, had Baby Dodds or Sid Catlett or Louis Armstrong records or Bunk Johnson records. There's a lot of very early stuff, and I always liked the drumming styles. And when I got into blues, I liked Fred Below, and as I discovered the New Orleans guys, not only Earl Palmer but Jimmy Black, Ed Blackwell, and then the more modern guys, Johnny Vidakovich and Stan Moore, and that style, and that especially Louis Armstrong's groups. I always liked the drumming on it. That was really what it was.
The early stuff too, like the Red Hot 5, right?
Very early stuff, and the fact that they incorporated parade stuff into it, but the parades were not like West Point parades. They're like New Orleans funeral parades.
Right.
And that's where I learned second line and Professor Longhair.
Yeah.
And Dr. John, and listening to Charles Brown records. Before Ray Charles, there was Charles Brown, and Bobby Charles became a friend when I was working with Paul Butterfield. He would come up and hang around. In fact, Paul Butterfield, Bobby Charles, and Rick Danko used to come to my house after the bars closed.
Wow. Is this in Woodstock?
Yeah, in Woodstock, because I had a Wurlitzer piano, a bass amp, bass, drums, and a little microphone with it through a small guitar amp.
Yeah.
And they knew, and they would come and knock at the door at 4 a.m. Hey, man, can we come in and jam? You know, but Bobby Charles would always come up with this great, lyrics on the spot. What a sweet guy. And Rick Danko was great too.
Wow.
But anyway, those tunes that Bobby Charles wrote and Fats Domino and that era of music and that style of music always appealed to me more than some other style, more than, Dave Brubeck or...
Yeah, it really comes through in all your drumming every time I hear you, and I love that.
Thank you. There's a tune on there, South Washington Street Parade. That's where this house is. I'm speaking to you from South Washington Street in Athens. So I was imagining this New Orleans parade coming down South Washington Street.
You nailed it. I wanted to do a little bit of a segue. I've always harassed you about this. I'm such a big Robert Palmer fan, and I recently interviewed my friend Donnie Wynn, who played a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great drummer. And the more I get to know him and that he's from New Orleans and that's where he gets his sound, it didn't surprise me when I re-listened to the 1978 Robert Palmer album, Double Fun. I think you did half the drumming and Richie Hayward did the other ones, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that Robert brought you in because maybe that second line type of sound, especially when you guys, the funky version you do of You Really Got Me. That's wild.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how you got into that project or any memories you have?
I got rid of my vinyl. I wish I had the vinyl in my hand right now to remember. I think it was Power Station.
Right.
I remember Robert Palmer being really nice and really supportive and, oh, that's cool. I like what you're doing. This is great. And whether they were his arrangements or somebody else's arrangements, I wish I had the album to look at all the credits.
Was this in New York City or at Compass Point where he recorded a lot?
I'm pretty sure it was New York City, and I'm pretty sure it was the Power Station because that was a very popular studio. Then it became Avatar, and now it's Power Station again, but owned by Berkeley.
All right, so I called it up here on my iPad. Oh, it's just ridiculous who's on this. Brecker Brothers.
I definitely hear them. 4-bar tenor solos that could only be Mike Brecker.
Okay, the bass player. Well, there's 3 bass players on that album. Pierre Brock, Jimmy Williams, and Bob Babbitt.
Oh, I must have done the stuff with Bob Babbitt. We were a pair back then.
Yeah. Wow, well, that's interesting. That's a really beautiful album. That's right before Donnie joined. And it shows a lot of the beginning of Robert Palmer when he used to play with guys from the Meters and Little Feat and stuff like that. I would like to go way back in time to when you were very young. Okay. I want to know, what is your first creative memory?
That's a really, really good question. My father was a painter, and every morning and every afternoon when I got back from school, that's what my father was doing. He was in his room. He didn't have a studio for a long time, but he had a room that he painted in, and he smoked cigarettes incessantly. So I remember coming home from kindergarten, and the room was filled with smoke, and he's down crouching on his knees. He used a sheet of galvanized tin and paper rolled out on the tin that he would wet with a sponge and then use pen and ink.
Wow.
And watercolors to make his paintings. And he also did oil paintings and stuff, stretching canvas and the smell of linseed oil and turpentine and oil paints.
You remember this very clearly. What an atmosphere, yeah.
Yeah. And the first thing that I can say, the first thing that I remember doing was a painting of a bird. I wanted to do a painting of a red-winged blackbird, which I had seen outside and observed, and I loved the song that they sang. And it was I'd seen robins and sparrows and pigeons, but I had never seen a red-winged blackbird before. So that really intrigued me, and I wanted to do a painting of it. And I got a little piece of wood and took some, he had a spare piece of canvas, and I stapled it on the piece of wood and made my own little structure, and then gessoed it. So it was a white background, and then drew this red-winged blackbird and painted it, and that was like my first, actual creation.
Did the painting come first?
Oh no, drumming was, from like 18 months old. I was trying to stand. Drummer he had a 30-inch, maybe 28-inch bass drum,
Yeah.
and a Black Beauty snare. I wish I still had that snare.
Oh, wow.
Black Beauty Ludwig snare and a Chinese cymbal, like from China, the real thing.
Wow.
With a turned up edge, and these tom-toms that were wood, but the head was stapled on with
Old
rivets.
School. Yeah. Old school.
Totally old school. So that was like a rudimentary set, and a premier hi-hat.
Ooh.
And a stool that, if I sat on the stool, my feet didn't reach the pedals. So
I see that with a lot of my students. It's actually really hard to find, if I have like a 4-year-old student, finding a drum throne that is close enough to the floor.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And even as a teenager, I remember cutting down the Ludwig Atlas snare stands because you wanted to sit low like Dino Danelli or the guy in the Vanilla Carmine Appice, or you wanted to sit on the drums. That was kind of a look. But you had to cut down the snare stand. Anyway, I couldn't reach the pedals, so my father made a thing with, two 2x4s on each pedal, kind of shaped so that I could reach the pedals and still be on the stool.
Wow.
And I would play along with records. And he had Count Basie and Duke Ellington and Woody Herman, I mentioned, 78s.
Yeah.
Lionel Hampton was a favorite. And I would just play along with records. And as many records as I could put on, until my mother said, "Chris, it's dinner time," or "Christopher." But she was very understanding, and that would be the first thing I said when I got home from school. "Mom, can I drum?" Okay.
No electronic drums back then with headphones.
No electronic drums, no headphones. There was a mono record player, and set up the drums so that one ear is right near the speaker and play.
Yeah. That must have taught you to play with dynamics, because you couldn't play too loud or you couldn't hear the recording.
That's right.
Were your parents creative? And do you find yourself these days doing something creative and go, "Wow, I got that from my mom," or "I got that from my dad"?
Definitely. My father was a painter, and he loved music, played records all the time. He played soprano sax in the Army, soprano sax and clarinet, I think. And when he got out of the Army, he swapped soprano sax and clarinet for this 28-inch bass drum and the Black Beauty snare drum and cymbals, just that Chinese cymbal. Mom played piano, but with 5 boys, she didn't have a lot of time for piano. But we did jam, with Mom playing piano.
Wow, family band.
And 5 sets of drums, on a tune like "Willow Weep for Me." And one of my fondest memories is her turning around from the piano and saying, "What about brushes?" Because everybody, 5 guys banging away.
Oh, jeez.
Dino Danelli, and here's Gene Krupa, and here's Buddy Rich, here's Joe Murillo, and Williams, all genres represented. Here's Max Roach, here's Joe Jones. We're all here.
That might be a great title for this interview. What about brushes?
What about brushes?
Well, I have to take another segue here, because now you're reminding me of your wonderful DVD you gave me, the Parker Brothers Extravaganza at Bearsville Theater. That was quite a while ago. What was that? Maybe 20 years ago?
Probably 20 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, tell everybody about that. I know all about it, but this is a really wild and fun DVD that took place in Woodstock.
Yes, we got all the brothers together. There's 4 out of the 5 brothers played drums. One brother, Jeffrey, is not really a drummer. He's an artist, and he played dobro, but he never played drums. It just was not his thing.
Well, dobro is a complex instrument, so that's impressive.
It is. And he's an artist as well as being a musicologist. He can tell you, Bob Marley cut this with the Wailers, and the way he knows all reggae. He's very knowledgeable. But Parker Brothers Extravaganza was the idea to have my father's band, my band, Eric's band, Tony's band, and Nicholas's band all on the same stage, and then all interacting together.
Good
at
God.
that time,
That's wild.
years ago, everybody had a kind of a standing group, either my trio or my brother Tony also had a trio at the time. My brother Nicholas had a great band called the Jazz Bastards, and they specialized in taking jazz tunes and writing kind of weird lyrics to them. And it was a very cool band, and they had a whole visual thing. Very interesting band. I wish they were still around. I used to go to their gigs just to hear them. But everybody had a band, and my dad had what he called Jive by Five, which was a kind of a swing band. No bebop. Like what they played stopped at around 1949 or 50.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a concert where all those facets were represented.
And who organized this? That's quite a ordeal.
My youngest brother, Nicholas, kind of organized it, and he had a whole video that went with it.
Yeah, it's really fun DVD.
He thought it would be fun for my father to, be incorporated into it, and really, I'm pretty sure it was Nicholas's idea.
Did your mom get to sit in on keys or no?
No, she passed away in 2017.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I think she was already gone when we did the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes up all the time. My dad used to do this, or I'm framing a new painting. If it wasn't for my dad showing me how to stretch canvas and how to frame something, I wouldn't have these skills, And
well, and I love how you, since I've known you, I love that photo of you painting the outside of your house. So it sounds like your dad using unorthodox ways to paint, almost like a fresco, like let's paint on something different than canvas.
Yes.
Did you kind of get that from him? Like you can go color outside the lines, literally?
Absolutely. You can paint on a piece of wood. You don't need, to canvas and have to go to Dick Blick or Utrecht Linen and buy, the perfect stretchers and the perfect pre-gessoed canvas and all this stuff. Paint on a piece of wood,
And then in recent years, if I remember correctly, with your paintings, you have been painting on fans, right? And little globes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was painting on fans because every summer go to Japan with a Kiko Yano trio, and it's always hot in Japan in August or September. And a lot of people in the audience had these uchiwa, is the Japanese name for them, a handheld bamboo fan. And I thought, it's rice paper. You could probably paint on that. And I tried. And sure enough, people liked them. And I started out just doing faces. It's a round shape. Okay, I'll do a face. But it expanded to do cats and dogs and landscapes and whatever comes to mind.
They're really beautiful and unique. If you go to your Chris Parker artwork website, there's quite a few of those featured on there, right?
ChrisParkerArtwork.com is mainly the sketchbooks, but
right. I think we did put some of the fans on there, though.
Yeah, and there's another website called ArtLampoon.com that really sort of features the uchiwa, the fans, and the globes, which are also rice paper. And once I did the fans on rice paper, I said, well, here's something else with rice paper. Could do these, and I could light them from inside, and they're 3-dimensional instead of 2-dimensional. And they're more challenging, but also more rewarding. They can hang from the ceiling and be lit with an LED or sort of spin in the breeze. Delicate work. You can't press too hard, or the pen goes right through the rice paper. I ruined a lot of them that way.
Trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah, trial and error, exactly.
It sounds like there should be a club, Chris Parker Club in Japan that has the globes and the fans and then your artwork on the wall. That would be perfect.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I do have a lot of fans there. I mean, people who come every year to see Akiko Yano, but always are looking for what's new in the Chris Parker merch department. Last year, I expanded to make sakush, they're called, little shoulder bags like a lady's. They're like 8 inches by 10 inches, maybe, a small purse, a zippered purse.
Wow, these
But
I
it,
didn't know about.
yeah, I don't have any pictures of those on the website. They all sold. I brought a bunch and I made shopping bags, like canvas bags. I gave one to Peter Erskine. I have a picture of his dog on a canvas bag. I don't know if he ever uses it, um, but they're canvas. So, if I stretch them on a board with push pins, I can paint on it like an oil painting.
Do you find that going back and forth between music and painting, is the painting, does that give you balance going between both of those? And also, is the painting almost meditative?
It gives me balance, exactly, right? And it's like a continuous flow for me. I'm either doing one thing or another. If I'm not playing a gig, I want to go to somebody else's gig and sit in the audience and draw them while I'm listening to the music. Or if I just came off the road or I just finished the gig in Japan, they end early. The first show is at 6 p.m., so you're back in the hotel by 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we got, 3 hours before it's sleepy time. What are we going to do here to continue the creative flow? And it's always, well, let me sit down and do a fan or a sketchbook or do a painting of something. But the two, painting is meditative as well. Sitting there doing a painting takes your mind off the stress of, I could have played that better. I could have played that better.
Right.
That was a little on top. I missed the bridge, the figure going into the bridge. All this post-mortem self-criticism of what you could have done better on the gig, and get into a painting where nobody can say, well, I think it should be a little more blue. Well, oh really? Yeah.
A lot of your paintings I've seen, like you go to see a jazz band in New York City. So do you take the sketchbook, draw what you see, and then take it home and add the paint later?
Yeah. Or if I know the place, like Iridium has pretty good light, or the Birdland rather has pretty good light, I can bring the sketchbook and my little watercolor set
Oh, wow.
to the table and work by candlelight or by the light of my iPhone.
You must be well
Sometimes
known.
just
Like here comes Chris with his art kit.
yeah, exactly. The results, painting by phone light, you don't always get the color right. So sometimes the next morning I look at what I did and say, oh my
Oh,
God,
no. Right.
they look like aliens. They look like, you're thinking, oh, this is good flesh tone, but actually you got somebody is the color of a beet or a
Yeah.
carrot. So it's sometimes more productive to just do the drawing, the ink part, while you're there, do the ink part in action, and then tint with the colors the next morning.
Your artwork has such a iconic style that I can recognize right away. I've always wished that it would be in New Yorker magazine. I think it would be perfect over the jazz reviews.
Me too.
All right, let's make some calls.
All right, make some calls.
Do you think creativity could be implemented in curing people or at least helping people with mental health struggles such as depression or anxiety?
Absolutely. Music, I'm sure we both agree, is very therapeutic, but I think drawing is also therapeutic. And to have somebody sit down, somebody who is challenged or autistic or hyperactive, I've dealt with all three of those conditions
Right.
with a person in after school programs or in a Cub Scout program and a Queens after school program where I taught, and the kid is hyperactive and he's not completely there, and I want you to sit down and and draw this, and give them a start and a pencil and a place to, and with nothing but support,
Right.
positive support. Oh, that's great. Keep doing what you're doing. How about this? How about that? And not only does it relieve the tension from whatever the condition might be, it also improves the self-esteem.
Yeah.
And look, in half an hour, look what I made, look what I created. So definitely drawing. With Cub Scouts, I did painting, actual watercolors.
Wow.
Which there's no mistakes. A little too much water, not enough water. You can't go too far wrong. You get the color on there, and you can even, tilt the paper and make it do something else. There's no limitations on watercolors, and it's quick and easy, and it's fun, and it doesn't make it, you can clean up afterwards. So watercolors are very useful that way, and the physical activity of mixing the color on the tray and seeing what, blue and yellow do together, and seeing what gray and black and white do together, making a blend of two other colors to see what turns out. I mean, a lot of times it's just brown, orange, gray, but to show them how to create gold, with a little orange and a little yellow and a little ochre. Wow, that almost looks like gold, like a dome of a roof in Israel or whatever. So I find it's maybe not the physical drawing, but the mixing of the colors can also be very therapeutic. The fact that they can take, two, basic pigments, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and turn that into something that's not on the palette. Here's a color that is not spoken for, and this can be your color, whether would come up with a name for this color. So if they're not completely tuned into drawing, or the hand-eye coordination is not as fine-tuned as it, to make them satisfied with the image that they're trying to create, the actual mixing of the color. And you can do it with colored pencils, the physical activity of the pencil going back and forth and making a blend of three different colors, and see what happens, can be very rewarding to somebody who needs to have, a physical output and a visual result. Sometimes you can narrow it down to just those two things. You need a physical stimulation, doing something physical, and a visual result, whatever it is. It can be just a page of shading, where you're doing cross-hatching from top to bottom. But with colored pencils or with pen and ink, you can create all this texture just by doing straight lines across and then straight lines up and down. Horizontal lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines, vertical lines, and you end up with a black page, but that page has got all these gradations of black and white and gray, and can be very rewarding just to have created that texture with your physical activity.
You're bringing a few things to mind by explaining all this. I remember when I was very young, one of my favorite art projects in school was we would wet a piece of paper and then just let the watercolors drip onto it, and then they would spread out. Have you ever done that?
Sure.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
When you and I have both done quite a bit of education and teaching and things like that, do you ever find yourself, let's say that you're doing something like you just explained, you're going to work with special needs kids, do you ever walk away feeling, I came to teach them and to give to them, but I'm coming back with more than I gave them? Do you find it to be a rewarding experience?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. The only kind of negative experience, a negative walking away experience I had was teaching this after-school class in Queens a couple of years ago. I called it urban percussion. And the kids were having a ball, and we were making music and writing raps and marching around the room and keeping these kids active from 2:30 until 5:30.
Yeah.
But the teachers who were upstairs and the teachers who were downstairs, the regularly accredited school teachers who had stayed after to correct papers, wherever, were so angry and so mad about
Jeez.
all the noise
Yeah.
and so vindictive. Jesus Christ, well, I'm trying to work up here. I've only got, and it was a trade-off.
Yeah.
Well, these kids have no place to go from 2:30 to 5:30 until
Right.
their parents are home. So your administrator set up this after-school program. I never had this discussion with any of the teachers. I just tried to tone it down. Okay, we won't do the stomping
Right.
this time. All right, we won't use the construction buckets, the turned upside down, feeding the construction buckets with drums. We won't do that part of it. We'll just do whistling and clapping. But that was tough. They were so angry about all the noise we were making, and yet they could have gone to their home to correct papers. They wanted to do it at school, I guess.
Or maybe the teachers should put some noise cancellation headphones on.
Or that, yeah. Put on noise cancellation phones, exactly.
I mean, I have a few thoughts on what you said. First of all, from me teaching for 12 years, I would see some kids that would get there at like 6:45, 7 in the morning, and because their parents had to work, they were often at school all day and then after school until 5 or 6. So first of all, it's really hard for a kid to be somewhere that long. They're going to burn out. They're going to be tired. They're going to be irritable. And there's so much pressure these days to do well academically. I think what you did there was really helpful to these kids because you gave them a little break. We're just going to have fun. We're just going to create together. There's no pressure. You can't draw a picture incorrectly. I think programs like that really help kids. And it's sad that a lot of schools are getting rid of the arts because I think it's integral to learning.
I think so too. One thing leads to the other. One thing helps the other. The learning process, music and math go together. Science and singing go together. I mean, it's a shame that.
Yeah. And you and I, as drummers, if you're going to play a Dave Brubeck song called "Take 5," there's a lot of math involved.
That's right.
Well, the last thing I have to say on that is I've spent a lot of my life, more than half my life, working with the special needs population. And one thing I love, I don't do art like you, but with music, I love getting kids playing instruments because if they have something like Tourette syndrome, the tics go away. Those involuntary physical or verbal things that are blurted out, I think it gives kids confidence because what I do often is I'll have a kid play the drums. So you're already using 4 limbs. And now I'll say, okay, let's sing this song together at the same time. And before they know it, they're doing 5 things at once. They have confidence. And guess what? All the tics go away. Just like somebody with a stutter that sings. I've met a lot of famous people that have extreme stutters, but you would never know when they perform and sing because it goes away. It gives you that magical confidence.
Exactly. And they come away with improved self-esteem.
Yes.
I can do this. I did this. I accomplished this. I was able to perform. I was able to do all this stuff that I didn't know I was capable of. And they come away enhanced.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful thing. I was reading an interview with Frida Kahlo recently, and she said, I don't paint dreams or nightmares. I paint my own reality. And that really made me think of your artwork because you are painting your reality. From everything that I've seen, the hundreds of paintings, it's your everyday life. It might be a building. It might be friends of yours playing a show. It might be a pot of flowers. I think that you do paint your reality. Would you agree?
I do agree, totally. I just wish I had her eyebrows.
There's still time, Chris. You and I both love the music of Thelonious Monk. Never get bored of it. In fact, yesterday I was playing you and Monk back to back all day. So there you go.
Great.
He once said, don't play everything or every time. Let some things go by. What you don't play can be more important than what you do play. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. I was saying just that to somebody last night at dinner. They said, well, how do you keep working? And I paused for I say, well, I've learned what not to play. I know what notes to leave out.
Yeah.
And they were talking about singers and stuff, and I said, well, I wouldn't play here. I would let the singer sing the song, let that lyric go by before I did anything.
Right.
And that's part of it. I mean, you have to play time, but you can play time without interfering with the melody or the lyric. And it's about leaving notes out and letting things breathe. And it's not necessary to firmly state everything that you're thinking.
Yeah.
Especially playing the drum, because it turns out sometimes you're strong but wrong. You're overpowering what else is going on, and depending on the song and the lyric and the mood you're trying to be a part of, all that is subject to change. But definitely, I think leaving out notes is more important than how many you can play in a bar.
I always tell my students, maybe when they're overplaying and things like that, or let's say they make a mistake, I always go, you know what? There's not really a lot of drummers out there today. Almost everybody is here to sing along. And your job, like you were saying earlier, is to keep people dancing and singing along. If there's a little break and they want a solo, that's fine. But in general, most of the audience are not drummers, and they don't care. They just want to feel good and enjoy the music.
Right.
I found a great interview with you. I don't know what year it was, but it was a website called thelastmiles.com. And you said, today I prefer playing live simply because there's so much of what's considered recording is one player at a time, layering parts on an existing track. Live, one has the other players to interact with and the audience to perform for and to act as a barometer of your communication skills. They should be dancing or nodding in tempo, hopefully. Now, I think this is great you pointed this out because...
Who said that?
Yeah, you said that. I hear this from a lot of your contemporary pals like Steve Gadd because, he often tells me that back in the day, you guys would do jingles and you'd see all your friends and you'd all play in the same room. And like you were saying, starting in the 80s, people started doing stuff track by track. I think I'm noticing a trend of people more playing together in the same room. So what is it that you like about that? It seems to me that almost all your solo albums are you and all your buddies playing together live.
I like the interaction and the ability to see instantaneously if you're grooving somebody or not.
Yeah.
Are they looking at you? Are they looking quizzically out into the room? Or are they distracted? Are they unhappy? Are they disdainful? Towards what's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, just to have that instantaneous take on what's going on emotionally is super important to the music.
Yeah, and if somebody makes a mistake, you can make something cool and unexpected out of that, right?
That's right.
You don't have to search for perfection. There's something beautiful about letting everything hang out.
Exactly. If you're searching for communication at the highest level, you want to reach for the highest level of communication, whether it's musical or a glance that you get from another player or a smile that you get based on something you just played. Those unspoken communications are at such a high level, that's like you're meditating, like you're trying to get in touch with your higher power.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important.
Tell me a little bit about double drumming. I'm a big fan of that. I grew up doing a lot of double drumming with my friends, and I still do it here in Hollywood. I know that you were in stuff with Steve Gadd, and you guys did double drumming. I just talked to Rick Marotta about double drumming with his brother. What's important when there are two drummers so you don't clobber all the songs? What do you think about when you're going to play with a band with two different drummers?
What's important is listening. That's the most important, because you're both on the same instrument, and it's easy to as you just said, clobber each other.
Yeah.
Steve and I never discussed what we were going to play, but we were
Really?
both listening. We never once, said, well, on this tune, why don't you play cross stick and I'll play 16ths on the hi-hat.
Right.
And then at the bridge, you go to the bell of the cymbal and I'll do 3 on the floor tom. We never discussed any single detail of what we were going to play. We
That's
just sat
crazy.
down.
It comes down to the communication again, right?
It came down to total listening and communications, and we often, in the early days, it was either him or me playing. So we each had an approach to a certain song that we came to be comfortable with, or that the Gordon and Cornell and Richard became comfortable with. Then when we got together, and Gordon said, I want both of y'all all the time. When it became 2 drummers all the time, we automatically adjusted to that, by reducing our individual parts. The listening is the most important part, and the volume. Since it's 2 sets of drums instead of 1 set of drums, you don't have to. There should be no bashing. There should be no.
There shall be no bashing.
There should be no Shannon Larkin. The stroke is coming from behind the middle of your back. And it's headed for the crash cymbal. He's a great player. I saw this video that they just did in the pocket. They called it a Yamaha night in Nashville. And Shannon Larkin is smashing the drums. I'm surprised the drum set was still. Well, he does. At one point, a roadie has to come and lift the cymbal stand. He's hitting the swish cymbal.
Yeah.
The chime so hard is knocking it, down to the level of the floor tom. Sounds great. Sounds amazing. But yeah, if it's 2 guys, you should be both reduce your attack.
Yeah.
And let always more. And Steve is the master. There's nobody quite like Steve, and I was lucky to have gotten to play alongside him for those years. Total inspiration and super human being. Everything about him I love.
And you guys are very complimentary. Speaking of the smashing, a little while ago, I took a student of mine who loves the band Tool to see Danny Carey play with his jazz band at the Baked Potato. And, Danny's a fantastic drummer, especially if you know Tool, or he just did this new King Crimson project called Beat. But what most people don't know is he has a great jazz band that plays about every month at the Baked Potato. And the show was going great, but he is such a big guy and strong guy. He broke the drum set.
Oh my God.
His 2 toms just fell off, and he was laughing. It was just really fun. But what a versatile player.
Yeah. I remember seeing with Tool. I love that band. That's so cool.
Talk about math. Wow.
Yeah, really.
Tell me a little bit about Will Lee, your buddy, who most people know as the bass player from the David Letterman show. How did you guys meet? And you still work together very frequently, right?
Yeah. We're going to Japan together in August with the Akiko Yano trio. We've been doing that for the last 16 or 17 years, I think it is. We met, I mentioned my wife, and her sister was married to the guy who owned Green Street Recording. Back in those days, I lived in Woodstock, and I had a band with this guy, Howie Wyeth. It was called Sneaky Cookin', I think we called it. The gospel band.
I like that.
Gospel band with four singers and a rhythm section. And we had a gig in Woodstock at the Joyous Lake. And the bass player, we had rehearsed in New York, but the bass player literally disappeared. It was like he went poof, and he disappeared. I wonder whatever happened to this guy.
He dematerialized.
I'm serious. He really, what happened to him? Nobody knows. He just disappeared, and I've never heard about him or seen him since. Buffalo Gelber was his name. Anyway, So there was no bass player for the gig, and we're casting about anybody know a bass player, and my wife's sister said, well, I just met a bass player. He moved here from Miami. He lives in my building. I said, give me his number, and that was Will.
Wow.
And we called him. We called him for the gig, and he came up to Woodstock. And from the very first note of we were playing "Tell the Truth," the Ray Charles tune, with this little intro, and then Ray Charles and the Raelettes take over. It's a great song. Anyway, he just watched and listened and fit right in, immediately. And he was, locked into me. And that was it. I said, this guy is great. He's unbelievable. And we talked, and he talked about, living in New York and this building on Carmine Street. He said, you should move back into the city. At that point, I had been in Woodstock about 4 years. And I said, you know what? Let me move back into New York. So an apartment became available in that building, 70 Carmine Street. Will lived on the first floor. Don Grolnick lived on the fourth floor.
Wow.
The singer who passed away last year, Margaret Dorn, lived on the second floor. Steve Kahn lived a couple blocks away. Yeah, me too. He lived on 21st and 7th, I think, and this was 7th Avenue, near a block north of Houston Street, Carmine Street. It's kind of in the village, but it's also on right off 7th Avenue. So that was how we met, and we started to play together all the time. We rehearsed in Don's apartment for, we had a thing called the Carmine Street Band that played at Mikell's after stuff, and Randy started to come by, and Randy and Mike started to come by. And Randy had all this new music. That became the first Brecker Brothers album.
Ooh, wow.
And the second Brecker Brothers album. And Sanborn started to come by. That was the beginning of the Brecker Brothers in Don Grolnick's apartment.
Incredible.
Which was a studio apartment. We were crammed in there between his Fender Rhodes piano, a drum set, bass amp, guitar amp. It was tight. But that's how, talking about the communication and the emotional response of being right next to somebody, you can see, are you getting over or not? Are you making this happen, or are you, not in the zone? You got to get in the zone. So you couldn't help but be in the zone.
And what a friendship. You and Will are still playing together, 5 decades later?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Over 50 years now. Yeah.
So a lot of people know your work because you were the drummer on Saturday Night Live for 6 years, and you also toured with Bob Dylan for 3 years. Are those things related? How did you end up doing both of those gigs? And I think you were doing them at the same time, right?
Yeah. I joined Saturday Night Live in '86 after Steve Ferroni left, and G.E. Smith was the band leader, and did the show a couple of years, '86, '87, and one day he said, "You want to play with Bob? Do a rehearsal with Bob Dylan?" I said, "Sure, sounds like fun." So, at that point, the bass player was T-Bone Wolk, the bass player at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
So T-Bone, GE, and I met at Montana rehearsal studio, and Bob came in, and we played probably 100 tunes over 3 days. Not all his songs, Beach Boys songs, Johnny Cash.
Wow.
Some obscure Scottish Celtic stuff, Barbara Allen, which is a song that's in the original Christmas Carol. A lot of weird different stuff. How about this? How about that? How about, do you know this one? Do you know this one? And a lot of it was Bob Dylan songs from earlier albums.
Yeah.
But not the hits. And it went really well. And I thought, that was fun. That was cool. And then his manager, we did, 2 or 3 days, and his manager showed up and wanted to know what we were doing the rest of the summer. Would you be available from June to August? And I said, sure. So we did one little tour. And at the end of that tour, they said, would you be available from September to November? Okay. Then we did another 3 months. And then would you be available, from January to March? So it kept, they kept adding dates. It was going well. And Bob was enjoying it. He liked having a small band, just bass, drums, and guitar. It was very like a quick moving, facile. It was easy for him to fit into whatever. And we were very adaptable to whatever he wanted to play. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So that's how that happened. It was almost 4 years, from 88 to 92. And the provision was that GE and I and T-Bone decided not to do it because he was hooked up with Hall & Oates at the time.
Right, that's what I thought.
But we got another bass player, Kenny Aronson, who fit right in. And the provision was that GE and I could go back and do the show. So they booked gigs leaving out Saturday night. And
that's
GE
wild.
and I, it was crazy. We were flying back and forth to do the show and then fly out Sunday morning to rejoin the tour. So, but it was going good. Bob was having a good time, and he was only 49, 50. He was playing ass off. He guitar picking and the harmonica thing, the orthodontist nightmare. He was singing great. He's playing great. And he was excited about it. This was the last band he had before this was the Rolling Thunder Review, which was like trying to herd cats from everything I heard. And this was a very nimble, is the word I'm looking for, a nimble quartet trio that could move with him and adapt whatever he wanted to do.
On the fly, yeah. And tell me, when you're playing drums on Saturday Night Live, who are two of the guests that you really enjoyed playing with and backing up on the drums?
The Quincy Jones Mantica, which he assembled a big band, probably 30 guys, everybody, every horn player in New York. That's a great clip. Mike Brecker takes a great solo on that. And that's me and T-Bone and the Saturday Night Live band, plus augmented by all these New York session horn players. That's a great clip if you can find it.
Yeah.
Quincy introduces it by saying, we wrote this special song because Nelson Mandela gets out of jail at midnight, and we wrote this special song. It's actually Mantica. Wow, so
that's so cool.
That was a really fun one. And Elvis Costello was really fun. We did two tunes with Elvis Costello. I think it was just me, GE, and I think it was T-Bone. We were doing attraction songs. I think one was called Cindy or California, something. To look it up. But we did 2 tracks. I remember listening to the records, which had Pete Thomas playing drums and trying to ape that, trying to emulate that. But they were not hits, but they were songs off previous albums.
Right. Your music website is chrisparkerdrums.com.
Right.
The one that I help you with is called chrisparkerartwork.com, and that's mostly the sketches that are watercolor painted. And you said there's a third one now?
There's a third one called artlampoon.com.
Tell me a little bit about that one. What's on that?
That got a couple of videos of lampoons, the globes. One is like a speed art, me actually working on one, speeded up. And another video is a non-fungible token that somebody made of another video that's kind of animation. That's kind of cool. And that's got music from the trio album.
Oh, yeah.
Before the last trio album, Tell Me, it's called. And then it's got huge catalog of lampoons, one after another. I don't know how many. And then Ushiwa, it's got the fans. And then if you go to the sketches page, it's got oil paintings and something about my routine. I draw every day, blah, blah, blah. And how to get in touch with me. And God forbid anybody wants to buy anything, how to buy something.
I've got one of your paintings hanging up in my studio. I love your stuff.
I know. You took when my son OD'd. You were really touched by
Yes.
painting of him in the hospital.
Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, and for
So
a difficult time in your life, the emotion and the
Oh my
heart
God.
really came through.
Yeah, really difficult time. So glad he's okay now.
How about social media? I know you're on Instagram. Are you still on Facebook too?
Yep, Chris Parker. There's 2 different pages, and there's Chris Parker Sketchbooku that you helped with, and Instagram is Chris P. Arker, and that's it.
So if people want to hire you as a drummer, or they want to get one of your paintings or one of your lampoons or one of your fans, they can go to any of these 3 websites and contact you there, right?
That's right.
All right, Chris Parker, this has been so fun. I only got through half my questions. So do you think we could do this again sometime soon?
Absolutely. Love to, Malcolm.
All right, man. Great to talk to you.
You too. Give my best to Christine and the kids.
Yeah, and you as well to your family.
All right. Thank you so much.